Hi, and welcome to A Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. In today's episode, we're talking about the healthiest beverage on the planet, coffee. That's right, coffee. It is the single biggest source of antioxidants in our diet, and people sip it hot and cold, and in many ways for various reasons. My guest today is actually working very hard to make people and the planet healthier with coffee. I'm honestly thrilled to have him with me today. My guest is Andrew Salisbury, who is the founder and CEO of my favorite coffee, Purity Coffee. I'm guessing a little known fact about Andrew is that he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for longest bungee jump from a helicopter.
I don't know how you slip that in. That's crazy.
Oh, welcome, Andrew. It's great to have you here. My friend, you are daring, you are risk-taking, and you are brave, if not a little crazy. So I wanted to mention that about your world record because I think it does demonstrate a lot about your personality and how you made a huge leap into the world of coffee as a business for health reasons. So I'd love to start by having you tell listeners what was the impetus for founding Purity Coffee.
Yeah, for me, it's an interesting story because we came about understanding the health benefits of coffee in a funny way. I was actually originally in the software business. I had a business which we sold in 2011, spent a lot of time traveling with my wife, and things were pretty great at the time. And then when we got back home, she started having some health issues. So at the time, it was sort of showing up as low energy, difficult to get out of bed in the morning, and just very, very low energy. And we were all concerned, but she was drinking a lot of coffee. And as an Englishman and as a tea drinker, I hooked onto this and doing my research about the health benefits of the foods that we were eating. And there was a lot of information. I say information. There's a lot of people saying that coffee was really bad for you and they were going to try and give it up or cut down on their coffee intake. And it was a sort of a mixed bag. So I tried to persuade my wife to give up coffee. Her attitude was, don't touch my coffee unless you can give me a lot of evidence to prove it's bad for me. So I set out on a little bit of a quest to prove her wrong and met 2 professors at the Institute of Coffee Studies in Vanderbilt. And I'll never forget the dinner that I had with them. And I asked them, it's like, okay, tell me the truth now. We're not in a classroom. Is coffee good for you or bad for you? And they gave me this long shopping list of all the health benefits that coffee had, from impacting liver health. For every cup of coffee you drink from the baseline, you have a 20% lower chance of ever developing fatty liver or liver cirrhosis or even end-stage liver disease. They talked about prevention of type 2 diabetes, of Alzheimer's, Parkinson. There's a long, long list. And then they explained to me that it's mainly because coffee is the number 1 source of antioxidants, and the thing called chlorogenic acids in coffee are really incredibly powerful and prevalent in coffee. So cut a long story short, I asked them, fantastic, I love it. This is going to be difficult for me to explain to my wife, but where do I buy the coffee that's healthiest? And that's when they all sort of both paused, looked around, and they just didn't have an answer because they said nobody was making every decision based on health. There was a lot of people who had great quality coffee and tasty coffee, but the things that caused the health benefits of coffee, no one was focused on. And that's sort of what set me down this path of research, where we spent close to a couple of years researching coffee, its health benefits, and what we would do if we made every decision based on health.
It's incredible. And hearing that all of that became evident to you in that one dinner meeting, that alone is the most surprising thing to me, because here, fast forward, it took years. We have more and more studies backing all of that up. And that information just isn't out there to the general public about preventing or helping ward off liver disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, being great for your immune function and overall longevity. So we'll talk a little bit more about those health benefits. I think the main thing that jumps out at me too is that people don't understand where and how to buy healthy, clean coffee. And there is a major difference when it comes to organic specialty coffee and what you might find already ground on the shelves of any store or when you're out and about buying coffee. People don't think about it. So that's what I would love for you to tell listeners today, is really set these clear differentiators between good, bad, and great coffee when it comes to clean coffee.
Yeah. Well, there's also good coffee for health and good coffee for the environment, and they're literally the same thing. And so let me go through what I think are the basic requirements of good coffee. First of all, it needs to be organic. It's the most heavily treated crop on the planet and is often treated with a type of pesticides and herbicides that wouldn't be allowed in the US or are not allowed in the US, but they're allowed in Latin America, treated on coffee, and then that coffee is sent to the US. So organic, I think, is when we looked at every decision based on health, that was the easiest decision. I think that must have taken me a good 5 minutes to figure out, well, that would be one requirement. If it's binary, if it's yes or no, is it healthier or unhealthier? Organic is definitely healthier. We didn't spend a lot of time on that. Then the grading of coffee is important. So specialty grade means that it has the smallest number of defects in any coffee. And so there's a grading system to recognize if there's any problems with the way the coffee was farmed or impurities as it shipped, and they're called primary defects. So having a specialty grade coffee with no primary defects is important. But probably more important than any of those things is that the amount of antioxidants in the coffee vary from crop to crop and harvest to harvest. And so one of the first things that we needed to do is we lab tested coffee from around the world and picked only the ones that are highest in antioxidants because it can vary greatly. So if you're not looking at coffee through the health lens, then you're not going to look at antioxidants. And so it's a little bit of a game of luck whether your coffee, which could be a fantastic tasting coffee, is good for you in terms of the antioxidants in the coffee. And so what we do is we select for antioxidants, and then we design a roast curve with the University of Brazil where we maintain the antioxidants in the roast curve. And without going into too much detail, in the early stage of roasting, you do create a thing called acrylamide, which is possibly carcinogenic and happens with any food like toast or French fries. Acrylamide is created. And in the later stage of roasting, you have a thing called PAH, which is on burnt food, and it's also carcinogenic. So focusing just on maximizing the antioxidants and not creating any of these negative compounds is, I believe, we're the only company in the world that does that for coffee.
It's fascinating and so important to say that too. That is not going too deep into the weeds. That's the information that I believe consumers want and need to know as well. So clean. And to that roasting part, can you tell us a little bit more about green coffee and what is the process for maximizing the chlorogenic acid or the antioxidants in the coffee specifically? How did you strike that balance or reach that sweet spot?
Well, so I was led by a primary question. I started working with Professor Adriana Ferrar from the University of Brazil, and she initially brought me up to speed, and I was just really trying to find out, is there all these health benefits associated with coffee? Is this real? And she walked me through the process and she walked me through the studies. And one of my first questions was, great, fantastic. Where is the farm that has the highest antioxidants? We'll buy all the coffee from that farm. That'll be all we have to do. And she said, the problem is it varies so much from harvest to harvest and crop to crop. You're just going to have to lab test. And I said, great, fantastic. We did that. And then she said, but now we have to develop a roasting curve for this particular coffee because every coffee operates differently under heat. And depending on the heat and the time, you create and destroy different compounds in the coffee. So we basically did a roast curve, and you pulled out samples every 30 seconds from the roast curve, and we sent them to the lab and we tested them so we could see what was exactly happening to the coffee as it was being roasted. So the important thing to remember, and probably for your viewers as well, if they're out and about and they're looking for coffee that's good for their health, the most antioxidants, the most CGAs come in light roasted coffee and the least in darkest roast coffee. But if you pull out the coffee when it's very lightly roasted, you create acrylamide, or you have acrylamide in the roast. And so you want to find that sweet spot with the most amount of antioxidants and not creating any of the negative compounds in the coffee.
Not sure about my own personal decisions now. I tend to drink dark coffee, but I drink your dark roast in full disclosure, because I'm not joking when I say it is my favorite and it's my daily coffee, because it's what I instill in people and share with everybody, that your daily habits matter most. So it is very important for me to drink a healthy coffee every day. I start my day with it. My morning ritual is so important. So all that said, I love that you have coffees that are developed for very specific health benefits. I drink Flow and I drink Ease. Tell us a little bit about that. And I guess this comes to even rebranding. In any case, I love the names of the different roasts and beans that you have. So fill us in on how you came up with that and what they're each targeting.
Yeah, it's a journey, and we're following the science as best we can with some fantastic advisors. But what we realized early on is chlorogenic acids, which are the polyphenols in coffee, that's incredibly important. But there's other compounds which fall underneath that, things like chlorogenic lactone, stregoniline. There's various compounds in coffee, cafestol, caweol, that we want for different reasons. And so we could both dial up those compounds in the coffee that we sourced to make sure they had more of them. So we could look for a coffee that was particularly high in certain compounds, but then more importantly, design a roast curve to bring those compounds out. And so we're really on the first rung of the ladder. And I think all of coffee science is on the first rung of this ladder. We've recognized that coffee is great for you, but we don't know exactly why in the mechanistic explanations of the health benefits. We know it's linked to the antioxidants. So what we're trying to do is now lean into those antioxidants that are likely to have the positive impacts on health. And that's one of the reasons why we work closely with people like you, nutritionists, doctors, integrative medicine doctors, because we're looking for feedback as we start to educate people about the health benefits of coffee for certain diseases, but also leaning into those compounds that actually make a difference.
And they do make a difference. And these are topics that, I am very passionate about and love to talk about because food is medicine and coffee falls into that category. And again, I'll reiterate, it's the biggest source of antioxidants in the American diet. Yep. And before we started, you were mentioning how common it is. What are the top 10 foods that people consume typically?
And this is something that I personally never made the link until recently. I realized how many Americans drink coffee, but I started to recognize that it is the single most consumed food on a daily basis, meaning of all the things that you eat, eggs is number 2. Coffee is number 1. If you're a coffee drinker, you're consuming coffee every single day. Most people don't forget their cup of coffee. I mean, you could forget your supplement. You could forget all the other things that you eat. You could decide to eat eggs that day or not. But if you're a coffee drinker, you're probably drinking that coffee every day. And so in the rule of sort of a high leverage point, this is something that has a high leverage point. If you focus on that one thing that you do every single day and improve it by a reasonable level, then it's going to improve your overall health more than anything else that you do.
So true. It's one of those small, consistent habits that has such a profound positive impact on your health. And if you're drinking it that frequently, if that's when people they think about what they eat all the time and not necessarily what they drink. If you're putting that into your body every day, why would you not want to make it the healthiest that you can? Hence, we were talking about that because that's what you're striving to do. And focusing on the health of the coffee, I mentioned this in my intro as well, that you're also working on creating a healthier planet. So it isn't just the coffee, I should say the impact on the individual's health from drinking it. You are very focused on where and how the coffee is grown and the sustainability of it. And I know that you also use regenerative farming practices. So listeners don't know is that on your quest to create the world's healthiest coffee, you also did buy a farm. Mm-hmm. And so I want to hear about that, the next step, that adventure in buying a farm, and tell us about the farming practices.
Yeah, and it all came about because we were initially just driven by science. So we wanted the North Star to be every decision made based on health without compromise. And we were willing to go in whatever direction that took us. But then over the years, we started to discover, as we were lab testing coffee from around the world, that the coffee that was highest in chlorogenic acids was actually farmed in an organic, regenerative agriculture way. So in other words, it was farmed in a way that was good for the planet. And the thing about farming practices is that when you till the soil, you release carbon into the atmosphere. When you don't till the soil and you have cover crops, you're basically pulling carbon down into from the atmosphere into the soil where it belongs, and that feeds the plant. So it stands to, make sense that the more carbon in the soil, the more rich the plant is, the better the coffee is in terms of chlorogenic acids. So we started to notice that coffee that was farmed in this way was better for you. So we looked at buying farms from regenerative, organic agriculture. We looked for certain labels like Smithsonian bird friendly. All our farms are Smithsonian bird friendly. And you would think, well, if you're a coffee company focused on health, why do you care about migratory birds? And while we do care about migratory birds, that's not our driver. Our driver was that we recognized there was more chlorogenic acids in coffee that was farmed in its natural way. And if the birds migrated and landed on coffee trees, it meant that it was grown in its natural environment. So there's papaya trees and banana trees and mangoes, and it's a place that a bird feels comfortable to land and build a nest on its sort of migratory path. Whereas industrial farming is just long rows of coffee trees that are sort of like there's a big tractor going between them, pulling killing off all the beans. It's bad for the birds. It's not a good environment. But we would look for that sort of label because it would shortcut our ability to buy coffee that was farmed naturally. And the big reason we bought our own farm is because we think that it's difficult for farmers to make the decisions and changes that they need to make about coffee and health when there isn't necessarily a market for it today. So we have a lot of people buying coffee based on health through us, 29,000 five-star testimonials in the last 5 years. It's crazy. But most people don't buy coffee based on health. Most people are not driven by health. And so what we wanted to do is experiment on the farm level. So we partitioned our farm into 6 different plots. We're experimenting with different cultivars. We're experimenting with different soil conditions. It'll take a longer podcast for me to explain some of these things, but things like biochar, which is activated carbon, which effectively you put on the soil, increases the nutrient content of the coffee, but sequesters carbon from the atmosphere. So in other words, pulls carbon from the atmosphere. So we're just sort of seeing this happy circle where one hand washes the other. You know, that if it's farmed in a way that's good for your health, it's also farmed in a way that's good for the planet.
And I'm sure it's fun. Don't you have fun going and seeing the fruits of your labor and learning more? I know we won't go down that path right now about the biochar. I would absolutely love to have a conversation about that at a later time for sure, because it's so exciting and it is changing the way we think about not just coffee, other products, other agriculture, and what we eat and drink. So it's just so exciting to hear that this is going on. And when people buy a coffee or another product and look it up and know this about it, I think they're more inclined to buy that particular product, quite honestly. In any case, it's to me an added benefit, and I love sharing that with listeners as well. I did not know about the Smithsonian bird certification until one of your blog articles came out. So I thought that was really special. And I sincerely mean that. It is. It's unique, and I think it's not well known.
Yeah.
You know, right? Bee friendly, now bird friendly. It all comes together. And so thank you. It's incredible. And I know that you're on this really amazing journey. How do you keep up with production? I am curious about that. How do you have enough coffee?
Yeah, well, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge because we're a very fast growth curve. There's a lot of word of mouth with our customers. So what we try and do is we predict demand through our subscribers. So most of our customers will have the choice between just buying single bags or subscribing, and they move quickly. In most cases, like 70% of our customers now are subscribers. So that gives us a little bit of an idea what the likely demand is going to be over the coming year. But the real big thing, which is part of our value proposition to the farmers, is when we find a farm that meets our criteria and our standards, we typically buy all of their coffee, at least for the next couple of years. So we make commitments to them so that we can do a couple of things. We want to improve what they're doing on the land, and we want to give them the funds necessary to do that. But at the same time, we want to buy all of their capacity that reaches our criteria. So we've often got coffee well a year into advance, but sometimes even then, unexpected sales or things that happen that we just didn't plan for. It does mean occasionally we run out of particular products at a time, but we're not willing to substitute. We're not going to be putting in a poorer quality coffee just because there's demand for it. And so that is one of the natures of this business. It's an organic food product, and it's not always going to be accessible in the same way that something that's mass produced would be.
Right. Okay. No, that's very helpful. So I won't get outraged if one day my subscription is delayed.
Well, the one thing that I would say is if you are a subscriber, we always prioritize subscribers, and we tell people that. We say, look, we have to give our subscribers coffee first. So if we have any visibility that you're not going to get a subscriber your coffee, it goes off sale on the site for people who want to order one-off bags, because we want to make sure our subscribers are looked after, because that's one of the benefits.
I appreciate that. I do. For anybody who knows me well, it's the first thing I do every morning. And I have to be honest, telling you, Andrew, I come to my kitchen. It makes me happy every single morning to open my bag of the fresh purity beans, and I grind my beans every morning and make my cup of coffee. So that's how I start my day before my yoga.
Love it. It's great.
Right? You're a part of my daily ritual.
All right.
Thank you. And I do know that purity does stand for purity, quality, transparency. That's very, very important to you. And I just wanted to reiterate that too, because the transparency part, I mean, we've talked a lot about the quality and what differentiates a great quality coffee from maybe not so good. And there are some bad products out there for consumers. They consume it and they don't feel well or it doesn't taste good. Don't you think that that's the first thing that identifies a poor quality coffee would be taste?
I think you're right. It's probably the first thing, but I think that probably I don't know, it's more important, but one of the problems with poor quality coffee is that people start getting the jitters, nervousness, cold sweats. We've all had that experience where you've had a couple cups of coffee too much and you're just feeling sort of like, well, okay, this doesn't feel good in my body. Well, that's not a result of coffee. That's a result of poor quality coffee. That's a result of drinking. Really, it can be anything from pesticide residue to mycotoxins on coffee, heavy metals, the fact that the coffee is often stale. Most people don't treat coffee like a food product. I mean, you really should be drinking your coffee within 15 days of roasting. After that, the oils on the coffee or the lipids on the coffee start to get rancid. And so that's one of the possible side effects with people who experience stomach problems. So freshness is really important. But yeah, taste is a really good indicator, but how your body feels is probably the one that's the most important indicator. Is just watch how you feel. Do a blind test. Try a coffee for a week. Go back to your normal coffee and see if you notice a difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great idea. I love suggesting that to people. If they're not convinced, like with any product, do your own personal test. That makes a lot of sense. I can attest to it. And I don't ever have I'm a black coffee drinker. As a dietitian, I'm a proponent of drinking black coffee to get maximum benefits with any of the bad stuff. People put artificial sweeteners, load it with sugar, bad creams, artificial cream, all of that. You and I know could talk about that. But in any case, it's when you have such a great quality coffee, then you feel good.
Yeah. It's funny because most people, and sometimes we get the feedback where people are saying, wow, I can taste dried fruits, or I can taste, is anything being added to this? And we're going, no, I mean, it's just like wine. It's a result of the land, and you're tasting some of the flavors in it. And people don't think coffee should taste like that because in a lot of cases, the large coffee chains, they have a problem, which is that they have all of this food product and they want to taste the same. They want the coffee in Singapore to taste the same as the coffee in Seattle when you go in. So the best way to do that is to over roast the coffee so all the thing that you taste is burnt. And so that's why so many people think coffee is just this burnt sort of flavor, which it shouldn't be.
Should not be. That's a disservice to everyone and every coffee bean out there.
That's good.
Oh boy, I love this. I honestly could talk about the nuances of the flavors of coffee. That alone is a topic. I could talk that all day. So speaking of all the amazing health benefits, Andrew, this is National Heart Month, and I really love to talk about the benefits of food as medicine, relating to heart health. What are the most compelling benefits regarding heart health and coffee?
We're focused as a company on the antioxidants in coffee. And so what we found is that the antioxidants in coffee and the polyphenols, what they do is they reduce inflammation. So they reduce inflammation in your body, and that has an effect on prevention of type 2 diabetes and the liver, 6 forms of cancer, but also in terms of heart disease, because inflammation is typically one of the biggest problems because we have a diet which is really high in sugar. And so the inflammation is one of the biggest culprits, and the polyphenols reduce inflammation. So just recently, the American College of Cardiology came out with a study. It followed about 200,000 people, really over 20 years, which as studies go, and it's an incredibly well-supported study. And basically, the results showed that even a small coffee consumption, 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day, reduced the risk of heart disease, reduce the risk of high blood pressure, and lower the risk of stroke. So, there's really strange things about coffee, about what the perception is and what the reality is. They've even found that people who are recovering from heart surgery have a benefit from drinking coffee afterwards. And you would think, okay, if there's ever a time you should not drink coffee is after you've had heart surgery. It's just not the case. Statistically, it's not the case. And the benefits of the coffee far outweigh any of the negatives of the caffeine in the coffee. Because remember, coffee is more than just caffeine. I mean, that's just one of many thousands of compounds, and it's the one that we focused on most, but it's not really where the health benefits come from.
Mm-hmm. So important to get this information out there because of those misconceptions. And a lot of it is just opinion or the fear factor. So just to reiterate, coffee, particularly healthy coffee, is great for heart health, and you can enjoy it with peace of mind. And also knowing that you're actually possibly improving your overall cardiovascular function when you mentioned the reducing inflammation and oxidative stress. Heart disease is a disease of inflammation. And it meaning coffee and the compounds in there do work to protect the lining of all of our blood vessels. And that is tremendous. That's what people need to understand. So I'm so happy to talk about that. And so for Heart Month, maybe have your late afternoon coffee with a little piece of dark chocolate. I know you're doing something good.
Yeah, and we've got a big promotion going on for Valentine's Day, so take advantage of it. But in terms of heart health, I mean, you're not going to do yourself any harm by drinking good quality coffee when it comes to heart health, and you'll possibly do quite a few benefits in terms of overall health, and in particular the health of your heart.
Exactly. So I just have some kind of fun questions for you. Do you still drink tea at all?
I do. I drink tea typically when I'm out. So
sense to me, you're not getting your coffee when you're out.
Yeah. When I travel, I bring Pocket Purity, which is our sort of coffee in a tea bag. So we sort of solve for that problem when people are traveling. You can bring a sort of like a little pouch, and it has a tea bag of the coffee in it. But sometimes if I'm at a restaurant or whatever, and I don't want to sort of make a big fuss, I just ask for a tea at the end of the meal, just because I know, unfortunately, I mean, you can go to the best restaurant in the world, and sometimes they'll know everything about every food that's on the menu. But when it comes to the coffee, they'll just tell you how the coffee should be prepared. They'll say, oh, we have a cappuccino or a latte or an espresso, but they won't tell you it's this coffee from this region, it's organic. And so I think there's still a bit of a misstep when it comes to quality of coffee. And so I typically don't take the risk.
Good point. And that's your next mission, hitting the restaurant industry, honestly.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of a nice meal, when you want that espresso and you don't want to end up with stomach upset.
Yeah, that's right.
You need an organic, a good quality coffee. Interesting. Okay. So, and I also said that to you separately. It's not an either or between coffee and tea for most people. If you want to maximize other antioxidants in your diet, or you are a tea drinker, again, enjoy your coffee and tea is what I always say.
Yeah.
So, okay. One other question. What's your favorite way of brewing and drinking your coffee?
I'm relatively basic when it comes to coffee making. I mean, I use a pour over method, typically as a Chemex in the morning. I like the ritual. I think it's a nice way to start the morning of grinding the beans and then heating the water to the right temperature, doing a pour over that first cup of coffee. So it's typically not machine made. It's typically like a Chemex and that sort of thing. But I also like French press. I think that's a great way of making coffee. And I have an espresso machine, so I do that occasionally as well.
Nice. Okay.
I drink a lot of coffee, as you would imagine.
I do imagine. Although I believe you revealed to me at one point when we met that, and you said this, you did not grow up drinking coffee. This came to you later, based on this discovery.
Yeah, when my wife was having the health issues, I was a tea drinker, and that was 8 years ago. So, I mean, I would occasionally have a coffee, but it was very rare. Run into Starbucks, get something, and then that was it. But really, maybe once a month, I was more of a tea drinker. So there came my prejudice.
I'm very proud of you for overcoming your own prejudice and discovering how delicious, aside from all the health benefits. So, because I couldn't wait to have this conversation with you, because coffee is my favorite beverage. Yeah. And nutrition aside, it makes me happy in that morning ritual. We didn't talk about that aspect. With the health benefits, there's a mental health benefit. Well, there's a known as far as cognitive function and mental health. I do think, though, that coffee does boost people's moods. And you and I both said we start our day with this very wonderful, it's positive to all your senses.
Yeah. It can be sort of like the eye in the storm. I mean, there's that moment before things get a little bit crazy. You own the day. You own that moment where you can really enjoy your cup of coffee. And it's one of these pleasures that would never compromise on, because if you catalog your day, it's one of the few things that you're just going, okay, that was a nice part of the day. And I think that's important. As you said, mentally, that's important.
Mentally, it is important. And I do encourage, when I work with people with coaching, I tell them to treat themselves every day and take that pause, that moment to have something like that, even an afternoon coffee. And I can tell you, I've had clients who said, okay, as a dietitian, they're on guard, and they'll say, oh, wait, you're not, quote unquote, taking my coffee away. I can work with you.
Mm-hmm. That's right. In fact, we've heard that a lot as well. I mean, it's very positive news for people who are counseling and dietitians and doctors to be able to say to their patients, don't give up coffee, just give up bad coffee.
Exactly. I love that. We could end right there. yet I have at least one more question for you.
Good.
So is there any one final takeaway you'd like to leave listeners with about coffee and or soil health?
Yeah, there's a few, and I'll try and distill it down to what I think is probably the most important one, which is that we believe a few things fundamentally. We believe that food is medicine, and we believe that climate change is real. We're a victim of it. We see what's happening in coffee. The World Health Organization talks about the amount of Arabica coffee being available being about 50% lower by 2050. I mean, that's huge. So there's going to be 50% less coffee available in 25, 30 years. And also you've got other people and groups entering to the market like China and India and Japan who are looking for more high quality coffee. So good quality coffee is going to go up in price. And as people start to recognize that coffee is good for their health, it's going to be more and more difficult to get good quality coffee at a reasonable price. One of the reasons why we want to work closely with the farmers, we want to give them a way to make more than just a basic living wage. We want to give them layers of income where they're producing coffee that's good for the environment and also producing the coffee that's good for health. And for that, they need to make investments. So what we're doing as a company, and we're partnering with some different groups, we're trying to find a way to fund these farmers to make the transition to regenerative farming. So the coffee is going to be better for your health and then better for the environment. All
I can say is thank you. That's incredible.
That's my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. I mean, we well caffeinated over here, and it's really it's just a fun journey. I never realized that coffee would be such a deep subject.
Oh, it really is. And yeah, I'm glad you discovered that, quite honestly. I'll leave it at that because it is. It's like, I can't underscore that enough. It touches so many people's lives, and what you're doing, the work behind it. It's not just about the drinking the coffee and, the taste of coffee and selling your product. There's so much more to it. And so thank you for really sharing all of this with us and for the work you do.
Well, and I think what's important is coffee could be an example, almost like a poster child of the way that we should farm in a way that's good for the environment and the nutrient content of that, whatever we farm. We're not going to measure the nutrient contents in one raspberry versus another or one tomato versus another. But with coffee, we are, because we're now focused on the health benefits. And we're going to start to see within the next 6 months, you'll learn what we're seeing on the farm, which is farming in the right way for the environment is hugely impactful for the coffee itself. And so what we're trying to do is create a trend with all food where it's a trend. We're on board a wagon that a lot of people are pursuing, but we want to be part of that mission, which is that people understand that the soil quality is the thing that makes the real difference when it comes to the food that you eat.
Mm-hmm. And focusing on the foods that the masses consume.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So fantastic. Oh, so, okay. My final question for you today, Andrew, is one that I ask of all of my guests. And that is, what is one thing you are grateful for today?
There's lots of things. Lots of things. One thing in particular I'm grateful for today, I mean, I have to say I have a pretty amazing life, an amazing family. And I suppose the thing that I'm happiest and most grateful for is I get to do what I love to do every single day. I mean, it's never old. It's always a new challenge. And this is, as I mentioned in the first place, I think it's the first rung of the ladder. I mean, I think in 20 years, we're going to have coffee for every sort of ailment that coffee can help with. We're going to know a lot more about the health benefits of coffee. The trend is already coming, but I think we're at the beginning of a journey. And I think it's something where we're going to start to see coffee as the health food it really is. And to be a part of that and to be playing in that game is super interesting, especially as somebody who came from the software industry with no experience in coffee. I was very lucky to have that sort of traction to be able to play in this game, which is a very busy red ocean of businesses.
Well, it's impressive how much you have learned about it. And that is also why I wanted to have you on my podcast and share that, because I think you know even more about coffee than most researchers and people have spent decades in this area already, because you came about it from a different place and pretty much to prove your wife wrong, it sounds like.
Yeah, it wasn't my finest hour.
And it backfired. Oh, too funny. Well, I am so grateful to have you here. And I know I promise this to you. If you and I keep doing what we do, we will be having continued conversations 40 years from now.
Absolutely.
Where we are really helping to make people and the planet healthier and live longer, better. So, yeah. Andrew, this has been fabulous.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, dear. Thank you for taking time to join me and listen to this episode. You can find more information and subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast on our website at ccphp.net SENS. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners, a concierge medicine organization that partners with and supports exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled experience of comprehensive, collaborative, and attentive care for a preventative approach on health and optimal well-being for members. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.